Victorious told us, "Don't forget about me." But the truth is, Nickelodeon kind of forgot about what this show could have been. Hey there, Star Riders. Welcome back to Diary of the Cosmos, where I spill my tea in the corner of the galaxy, share my stories, and sometimes we learn something along the way. Today, we're diving back into the Victorious rabbit hole, but this time we're not talking about couples, we're talking about something I've been thinking about for a while now. The idea that Victorious could have worked even better as a drama comedy instead of just a comedy on Nickelodeon. I also want to give a quick shout out to a viewer who commented on my previous Victorious video and mentioned the idea of a dramatized series of the show. That comment honestly got my brain spinning because the more I think about it, the more I realize something. Victorious was sitting on top of a much deeper story than the show ever allowed itself to explore. So, in this series, I'm imagining what a reboot called Victorious Make It Shine could look like if the show leaned into that potential. In part one, we're going to explore the foundation of this reboot, starting with the concept of the show and how half of the main cast would evolve in the new version of Hollywood Arts. So, grab your pen, Star Rider, because we're opening the first page of Make It Shine. First, let's start with the show itself. Victorious was originally tailored to a younger audience, much like iCarly, which makes sense considering both shows exist within the same Nickelodeon era and timeline within their respective shows. But on the surface, they share similar DNA. Colorful humor, exaggerated situations, and a cast of characters designed to bounce off one another through jokes, chaos, and over the top personalities. But where iCarly centered around a trio of kids creating fun, silly internet content and accidentally becoming worldwide sensations long before TikTok made viral fame feel normal, Victorious was different at its core. Victorious was about talent. It followed a group of creatively gifted students attending Hollywood Arts, all while chasing the same dream, making it in the entertainment industry. And that difference matters because while both shows deliver jokes that still make us laugh to this day, Victorious was quietly sitting on heavier subject matter. These weren't just kids getting into wacky situations, these were high schoolers surrounded by competition, pressure, favoritism, rejection, and the constant fear of not being good enough. And yet, the show rarely slowed down enough to truly explore what that kind of environment does to a teenager. As adults, when we revisit Victorious, some of the jokes still land, but others make us pause and ask, where exactly were the writers going with this punchline? And more importantly, what story could have been told here if the show had been allowed to grow with its audience? That's where Victorious Make It Shine comes in. This hard reboot wouldn't erase what made the original special, it would evolve it. The reboot would still be accessible to younger viewers, but it would be intentionally geared toward teens, young adults, and longtime fans who grew up watching these characters. Instead of leaning fully into cartoon logic, the series would embrace a drama comedy tone, using humor as a relief rather than distraction. At its heart, Make It Shine would be a story about navigating high school while chasing impossible dreams, about talented kids at Hollywood Arts learning that passion doesn't always guarantee success, that talent doesn't always get rewarded fairly, and that growing up in an industry built on comparison can be just as damaging as it is inspiring. This version of Victorious isn't about toning down the fun, it's about finally letting the story say something. When it comes to a hard reboot of Victorious, the direction of the series is just as important as the characters themselves, because direction determines who this show is actually for. For this reboot, I envision Victorious Make It Shine primarily airing on Teen Nick, with occasional crossover airings on Nickelodeon. Specifically, it will function as that bridge show, the final program before the channel transitions into Nick at Night. That kids to adults handoff feels symbolic because Make It Shine itself lives in that in between space. Not a kids show anymore, but not disconnected from its Nickelodeon roots either. Only the comedy stays because comedy is the heart of Victorious, but the humor will be refined. The reboot will move away from the overly bizarre or shock value jokes that don't age well and instead focus on character driven comedy. Humor will come from personality clashes, ambition, insecurity, rivalry, and the absurdity of the entertainment industry, not from making the characters feel cartoonish. At the same time, this show would fully embrace a drama comedy balance. The drama wouldn't overpower the fun, but it would add emotional weight, allowing moments to breathe, consequences to matter, and conflicts to actually evolve instead of resetting every episode. From the production standpoint, the reboot would reject the modern streaming trend of overly short seasons. Each season would consist of more than 10 episodes, but no more than 24, striking a balance between depth and burnout. Episodes would be close to 1 hour long, giving enough space to explore performances, interpersonal fallout, and long form character arcs. Specials would expand beyond that, either as two-part episodes, extended finales, or even TV movies running up to an hour and 30 minutes. If the series proves successful, and honestly, I think it would, this is the kind of show Teen Nick would absolutely invest in long term. I could easily see Make It Shine becoming one of the network's longest running series, potentially standing alongside legacy titles like SpongeBob SquarePants on Nickelodeon and Degrassi on Teen Nick. Narratively, the reboot would start with Tori, Robbie, Rex, Kat, Andre, Jade, and Beck as 10th graders at Hollywood Arts, placing them at the beginning of their most formative years. The series will follow them all the way through graduation, allowing the story to end naturally instead of overstaying its welcome. This structure also makes Trina the only recurring upperclassman at the start of the series, which adds a subtle but important layer to her role in the ensemble. This direction allows Victoria's Make It Shine to grow with its audience, giving us humor, drama, and character growth that actually feels earned. Another major shift in the direction of Victoria's Make It Shine is that the story wouldn't be confined to Hollywood arts as a backdrop. We would treat the school as a living, breathing environment while also letting us see who these characters are outside of it. In the original series, Hollywood Arts often felt like a stage rather than a school. We saw performances, hallway bits, and classrooms in passing, but rarely the structure, pressure, or daily reality of attending an elite arts high school. In this reboot, that changes. We will spend more time exploring classes themselves, not just as setups for jokes, but as spaces where character dynamics and conflict naturally unfold. Different departments will have different cultures, competitive voice classes, emotional, intense acting workshops, creative but chaotic music sessions, and teachers who each have their own biases, favorites, and philosophies about talent. Success in one class wouldn't guarantee respect in another, and that imbalance would directly affect how students see themselves. School life would matter too. Grades, performances, favoritism, scheduling conflicts, auditions, and public critiques will all play into the stress these students carry. Hollywood arts wouldn't just be where dreams are born, it will also be where they're questioned, reshaped, or quietly crushed. Outside of school, we'll finally explore the characters' home lives, something the original series rarely touched. Seeing where these students come from adds necessary context to who they are. What kind of support or pressure do they get at home? Are their families invested in their success, indifferent, or living through them? And who has the stability and who uses Hollywood arts as an escape? These home environments will explain a lot about their behavior at school, insecurity, arrogance, egotism, and control issues. China doesn't exist in a vacuum, and neither do these characters. By exploring both the inner world of Hollywood arts and the external lives of the students, Making Shine becomes more grounded and emotionally layered. It's not just about what happens on stage, it's about what happens before and after the spotlight turns on. Another element that would elevate Victoria's Make It Shine is the intentional return of celebrity guest appearances and crossover episodes. Similar to how teen shows in the early 2000s used guest stars to enhance the world rather than distract from it. Hollywood Arts is supposed to be an elite industry connected school, so it makes sense that real established artists, actors, and creators would occasionally appear and pass through its halls. Guest appearances wouldn't just be cameos for shock value, they'd be integrated into the story as mentors, visiting performers, workshop leaders, or collaborators whose presence directly impacts the students. This also opens the door for something even more meaningful: legacy casting from the original series. Rather than simply recreating the same characters, select members of the original Victoria's cast could return and evolve behind the scenes roles, showing what it looks like to survive and sometimes compromise in the industry. For example, Leon Thomas III could take on a permanent or recurring role as Hollywood artist, music teacher, vocal coach, or instrumental instructor. This wouldn't just be fan service, it would be symbolic. Having someone who once played a prodigy now guiding the next generation reinforced the show's core theme. Talent doesn't disappear when you grow up, but it does change. Other original cast members could appear as alumni who made it and aren't as fulfilled as expected, alumni who didn't make it but found peace elsewhere, industry professionals returning to scout talent, and guest mentors who advise conflicts with the school's philosophy. These appearances would add emotional depth, intergenerational storytelling, and a sense of continuity, making Hollywood arts feel like a place with history, not just a setting. Most importantly, these guest roles will serve the story. They challenge the main cast ideas about success, fame, and longevity in the entertainment industry, reminding them and the audience that there's more than one way to make it shine. Now, let's talk about the characters because if we're being honest, reboots rarely change character names.
God, bro. Oh, hell no, man. What the fuck, man? Get your
Networks are notoriously hesitant to invest in brand new characters, and when they do, 9 times out of 10, they give them the most ridiculous names imaginable. So, for Victoria's Make It Shine, the characters stay, but who they are, how they're treated, and what they represent evolves. This reboot keeps the familiar foundation while reworking traits, personalities, and backstories to fit a more grounded drama comedy tone. And the best place to start is with Miss Chicago herself, Trina Vega.
Chicago, Chicago.
In this series, Trina starts as a junior, making her the only upperclassman among the core cast. Instead of being universally mocked by students, teachers, and even her own family as she was in the original, Trina occupies a very different role. She's still loud, still dramatic, still occasionally unbearable, but she's also very useful. Trina becomes a guiding upperclassman, not a mentor in the traditional sense, but someone the younger students occasionally turn to when they need advice on navigating Hollywood arts, surviving the social hierarchy, or understanding how the entertainment industry actually works behind the scenes. She's still Tori's older sister, and she genuinely loves her, but jealousy is unavoidable. That sibling tension becomes a recurring emotional thread. Trina feels like opportunities fall into Tori's lap, while she has to fight twice as hard just to be noticed. The arguments aren't cartoonish, they're raw, uncomfortable, and painfully relatable, especially for siblings living in the same shadow. One of the biggest changes in this reboot is that Trina isn't untalented. Instead, she is untrained. In a season 1 episode titled Re Audition, where students must re audition to keep their place at Hollywood Arts, we see that Trina actually has potential, particularly in singing and dancing, but lacks refinement, discipline, and proper coaching. Her talent has never nurtured correctly, and that failure falls just as much on the system as it does on her. But Trina's real talent is knowing everything. She has a natural instinct for information, dynamics, and power. Trina knows who's talking, who's lying, who's cheating, and who's pretending. Think Sharpay Evans mixed with Wendy Williams, with just enough chaos to keep everyone on edge. In Make It Shine, Trina doesn't move through Hollywood arts like she owns the place. She moves through it like someone who knows the place. She's that girl not because she knows she is, but because information is currency and Trina is rich. In re audition, when the new principal considers cutting her from the school, Trina gets wind of it, and instead of spiraling, she retaliates. She blackmails the principal with information she's uncovered, forcing her to let her stay. It's morally questionable, yes, but it established something important. Trina survives. He later becomes the school's unofficial newscaster, running anonymous live streams on the Slap, where she airs Hollywood art's messy mess nightly. At first, it's subtle, anonymous, vague, but once she's threatened by another student, Trina stops hiding. Names get named, stories get confirmed, and suddenly everyone realizes just how much power she holds. Trina's arc throughout the series isn't about becoming nicer, it's about becoming intentional. She lives by one rule: I said what I said, now what are you going to do about it? And for once, the show takes her seriously. Let's talk about the reason this story exists in the first place. Tori Vega. At her core, Tori stays largely the same as she was in the original series, but in Victoria's Make It Shine, we finally integrate why she is the way she is. This reboot doesn't reinvent Tori, but it deepens her. Tori's defining traits in this version are imposter syndrome, fear of being average, and survivor's guilt. These qualities were always present in the original series, just never fully explored. In Make It Shine, they've become foundational to her character arc. In season one, these traits are strongest, especially in the pilot. Tori enters Hollywood arts not because she trained for years or planned for this life, but because she was suddenly chosen. She took Trina's place in the showcase, impressed the right people at the right time, and was ushered into an elite environment overnight. While everyone around her celebrates that moment, Tori quietly wonders if she actually deserves to be here. As the series progresses, these insecurities don't disappear, they evolve. In season two, they resurface in subtler ways, tied to comparison, rejection, and pressure. Later seasons only sprinkle them in, but by then, the audience understands that Tori's greatest conflict isn't competition, it's self doubt. Andre remains Tori's closest and most stable friend, just as in the original series. Andre Harris is her emotional anchor, the person who believes in her even when she doesn't believe in herself. In this reboot, however, Kat Valentine also becomes one of Tori's closest friends. Their bond is rooted in softness and safety. Kat provides emotional support without expectation, create a space where Tori doesn't have to prove anything. This friendship contrasts sharply with the competitive environment of Hollywood arts and becomes essential to Tori's mental well being. Tori enters Hollywood arts as a normal high school girl, dropping into an extraordinary world. She doesn't know the politics, the unspoken rules, or the social hierarchy, and that makes her vulnerable. That's where Beck Oliver comes in. Beck serves as Tori's informal guide, not because he's particularly ambitious, but because he's already comfortable in this environment. He understands how Hollywood arts works, even if he doesn't care to excel within it. Through Beck, Tori learns how to survive the school, how to navigate attention, and how easily talent can be overshadowed by image. The reboot keeps the key canon moments intact for emotional continuity. Corey's first day at Hollywood Arts, the acting class exercise led by Mr. Sikowitz, and the kiss between Beck and Tori all remain. Jade being Tori's rival slash mortal enemy and sometimes partner in crime when both align on the same cause. But here, these moments aren't just playful, they're formative. They mark the beginning of Tori realizing that talent alone won't protect her, and that success at Hollywood Arts come with complications she wasn't prepared for. Ultimately, Tori isn't meant to be the most talented, not the loudest, or the most ambitious student at Hollywood Arts. She's the most adaptable, and that's both her strength and her burden. Tori's Make It Shine isn't about watching Tori win, it's about watching her figure out whether being chosen is a gift or a responsibility she never asked for. Since I've already spoken briefly about Andre, let's take a moment to really talk about him because Andre is one of the most important characters in Victoria's Make It Shine. Like Tori, Andre largely stays the same at his core. He is an incredible musician, songwriter, and composer, arguably the most naturally gifted artist at Hollywood Arts. His iconic songs, including 365 Days, Song to You, and Countdown, remain part of the series along with other classic tracks from the Victorious soundtrack. Music is Andre's language, his coping mechanism, and his identity. From the very beginning, Andre serves as Tori's emotional anchor. Before she's even officially a student at Hollywood Arts, he pushes her to perform at the showcase. He supports her on her first day when she feels like she doesn't belong. He comforts her in quiet moments, whether it's self doubt or something as small but stressful as trying to find the dollar sign to get Kesha out of being Trina's assistant. But that support is mutual. Tori is also Andre's emotional anchor. She's there when he admits he's in love with Jade. She sings backup vocals for his songs, appears in duets with him, and believes in his talent even when he doesn't. Their bond is deep, creative, and emotionally intimate, even when it's not romantic. Andre's compassion doesn't stop with Tori. He's a source of stability for most of the entire main cast, with Trina being the notable exception. His kindness, patience, and big heart are evident in moments like caring for his paranoid grandmother, showing that Andre has been emotionally responsible for others long before Hollywood arts entered the picture. In Make It Shine, Andre is very much a lover boy. He loves deeply, openly, and sometimes recklessly. The canon storyline where Andre falls in love with Jade stays, but instead of being confined in a single episode, it stretches across multiple episodes. This allows the relationship to fully explore longing and balance, then emotional confusion before ultimately collapsing. After what Tori jokingly calls his Jade phase, begins to develop feelings for Tori later in the series, slowly and quietly. It's not rushed and it's not acted on immediately. Instead, it becomes part of his internal conflict, loving someone who already relies on him emotionally and questioning whether that love will ever be returned in the same way. However, and this is important, Andre does not remain emotionally stranded. In this reboot, Andre eventually enters a long term relationship with someone outside the main cast. This girlfriend isn't dazzled by Hollywood arts or impressed by his resume. She chooses Andre for him, not his talent. Their relationship becomes one of the few spaces where Andre isn't required to fix, support, or inspire someone else. For the first time, he gets to be held. Andre also takes professional criticism deeply. Feedback from record labels, executives, and producers cut him in ways it doesn't cut others. He begins to question whether he's creative enough, unique enough, or remarkable enough to be discovered, despite being undeniably talented. The canon episode where Andre dates a music exec's daughter to try to get discovered stays in the reboot, but with more emotional weight. It's no longer played purely for laughs, it becomes a reflection of desperation. Andre isn't chasing fame, he's chasing validation, and that pressure builds. Andre's arc in Make It Shine is about learning that being the backbone for everyone else doesn't mean sacrificing himself. He has to learn that his worth isn't defined by how useful he is, how much he gives, or how quietly he carries the weight. Sometimes the most important gift in the room is also the most tired. Now, let's talk about Tori's new best friend in the series, Kat Valentine. Kat is one of the characters I would change the most in Victoria's Make It Shine, not because she lacked potential in the original series, but because the show never committed to a clear direction for her. Early on, Kat was presented as a fairly normal girl, emotional, sensitive, a little quirky, but still grounded. As the seasons progressed, however, the character increasingly infantilized, more childlike, less aware, and often reduced to a punchline. In this reboot, that inconsistency becomes intentional. Kat's arc centers on identity confusion and how being perceived as cute, sweet, and harmless slowly strips her of agency. Rather than treating her behavior as stupidity, Make It Shine reframes it as a coping mechanism, one that Kat has learned gets her attention, affection, and safety in an environment that otherwise overwhelms her. In the reboot, Kat is admitted to Hollywood Arts as an acting major, but she quickly realizes that acting alone doesn't feel like a complete fit. Instead of being one clear path, Kat floats between disciplines acting, music, fashion, performance, mirroring her uncertainty about who she's supposed to be. This is inspired by candy moments, like the episode where Kat unexpectedly excels at fashion design. In Make It Shine, those moments aren't one off jokes, they're clues. Kat is talented in multiple areas, but because she doesn't commit to one immediately, she's often dismissed as unfocused or unserious. That judgment weighs on her. Over time, Kat begins to explore music more seriously, drawing inspiration from a pop driven path similar to Ariana Grande's early career trajectory. Music becomes a space where Kat can express emotions she struggled to articulate verbally. However, instead of fully pursuing fame as a singer, Kat eventually gravitates towards fashion design, a career that follows her to stay creative without constantly performing herself. Much like Ariana Grande eventually branching into beauty and branding, Kat's journey reflects a broader truth. Not everyone who enters the entertainment industry wants to stay in front of the spotlight. Kat's appearance becomes a subtle but powerful storytelling tool throughout the series. Her signature red hair remains at the start of the reboot, bold, playful, and eye-catching. But as the seasons progresses, Kat gradually shifts to more natural hair tones and colors. This change isn't about growing up in a traditional sense, it's about reclaiming control over how she's seen. The more Kat understands herself, the less she feels the need to perform cuteness for validation. Her visual evolution mirrors her internal one quiet, deliberate, and deeply personal. As Tori's closest emotional confidant, Kat offers something no one else does un- unconditional presence. She listens without judgment, comforts without expectation, and never treats Tori's struggle as competition. At the same time, Kat's own emotional labor often goes unnoticed. People assume she's fine because she's smiling. They assume she's okay because she's sweet, but she isn't always okay. Kat's arc in Victoria's Make It Shine is about learning that softness is not the same as weakness, and that being gentle in a ruthless industry is both a strength and a risk. And that's where we're going to pause for today. So far, we've laid the foundation for Victoria's Make It Shine, the tone of the reboot, the direction of the series, and how some of the characters would evolve in this version of Hollywood arts.
But wait! There's more! Hang on to your seat, baby! Cause this one's a screamer!
In part two, we'll finish exploring the rest of the main cast, dive deeper into the core theme of Make It Shine, and start shaping what season one of this reboot could actually look like. But before we get there, I want to ask you something, Star Riders. Based on what you heard so far, this version of Victoria's, the tone, the direction, and the character changes, would you actually watch Victoria's Make It Shine if it were a real show? Let me know down in the comments because I'm really curious to hear what you think. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the journey through the stars for more out of this world ideas. Until next time, keep your pen to the stars and your heart in the pages. Sincerely yours.